The evening was calm in the sleepy town of Stewartville. The sun hung low, casting elongated shadows across the neat row of modest homes. On the porch of one of them sat Samuel Turner, 93 years old, with a lifetime of untold stories that most of the town couldn't even imagine. His weathered hands, marked by the passage of time, remained steady as he quietly sipped his coffee. His gaze lingered on the horizon, the stillness of the moment disturbed only by the distant rumble of engines. Samuel didn't flinch. He'd heard that sound many times before, especially over the past few weeks. It was the bikers again. Axel and his crew rolled into Samuel's front yard, their laughter cutting through the peaceful afternoon. Axel, the leader, stood out, a towering figure draped in leather, his skin covered in tattoos, and a permanent sneer etched on his face. The gang followed suit, parking their bikes on Samuel's lawn like it was their personal garage. Well, if it isn't our favorite grandpa, Axel sneered as he swaggered off his bike. His gang laughed in chorus, mimicking their leader's arrogance. Samuel remained silent, his calm demeanor unshaken by their attempts to provoke him. This wasn't the first time they'd targeted him, and it wouldn't be the last, or so they thought. "What's the matter, old man? Cat got your tongue?" Axel taunted, moving closer. He knocked Samuel's coffee cup from his hand, watching it smash against the porch. Samuel glanced at the broken cup, then back at Axel, his eyes cold but composed. "You've had your fun. Now leave." "Oh, we're just getting started," Axel replied, leaning in closer. "What are you going to do about it, old-timer? Call the cops? Go ahead. I'll be out in an hour, tops." Samuel's gaze didn't waver. "I'm not calling the cops." Axel faltered for a moment, thrown off by Samuel's composure. "Yeah, then who are you calling?" Slowly, Samuel rose to his feet, his joints creaking as he straightened up, still a few inches taller than Axel. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out an old flip phone. "I'm making one call," Samuel said steadily, "and when I do, you'll wish you'd never set foot on this lawn." Axel hesitated, but quickly masked it with a mocking laugh. "Yeah, right. Who's it gonna be?" "Ghostbusters." Axel jeered as Samuel pressed a button on the phone, causing it to start ringing. The sound of the phone rang out in the tense silence, while Axel's laughter echoed through the yard. His crew, amused, laughed along. They'd been terrorizing Samuel for weeks, vandalizing his home, harassing him in public, and no one in the town dared to intervene. Why should today be any different? Still, something about Samuel's steady demeanor unsettled Axel. Beneath his tough exterior, a small voice warned him to be careful. There was something about Samuel that didn't align with the image of a frail, helpless old man. "Who's on the other end of that call, old man?" "Your bingo friends?" Axel taunted, stepping closer. "Let me guess, they're gonna come scare us away?" Samuel stayed silent, his eyes locked on Axel, the ringing of the phone the only sound. Axel's patience was wearing thin. He snatched the phone from Samuel's hand, glancing at the screen. "Just one call, huh?" Axel mocked. "Let's see who you're bothering." Before he could hang up, a voice answered on the other end, and Samuel spoke calmly, his voice unwavering. "Ryan, it's time to activate the protocol." Axel frowned, still holding the phone. "Protocol? What kind of crap is this?" Samuel's expression remained unchanged. "You'll find out soon enough," he replied. An uneasy silence hung in the air as Axel tossed the phone back to Samuel, trying to regain control of the situation. "You're just an old man with nothing left," Axel sneered. "I don't care who you think you are. We run this town now." Samuel's calm, unshaken stare made Axel increasingly uneasy. His gang was still laughing, but their leader's confidence had started to crack. Something about the old man's certainty bothered him. "Come on, let's get out of here." "This old guy isn't worth our time," one of the bikers muttered, and others murmured in agreement. But Axel wasn't ready to back down. "No," Axel growled, stepping closer. "We're going to teach him a lesson." He raised his hand as if to strike, but before he could act, Samuel's phone buzzed with a message. Samuel opened it calmly, a small smile playing on his lips. Axel snatched the phone once again, reading the message aloud. "Target locked. Phase 1 initiated," it said. Axel's face twisted in confusion. "What the hell is this?" he spat, throwing the phone back to Samuel. Samuel said nothing, simply turned and walked back inside his house, leaving Axel and his gang standing there, brimming with unanswered questions. As Axel led his gang back to their clubhouse, the usual bravado was missing. The unsettling feeling gnawed at him. What did protocol mean? Why hadn't Samuel seemed the least bit afraid? Back at the clubhouse, Axel tried to shake off the doubt, rallying his crew with more tough talk and plans. But deep down, the old man's strange confidence gnawed at him. Later that night, Axel's phone buzzed. It was a message from his bank. He opened it, and his eyes widened. Your account has been temporarily frozen due to suspicious activity. What the hell? Axel muttered, frantically checking his other accounts, but the messages were the same. Frozen. Confused and enraged, Axel called the bank. But all they could tell him was that it might take days to resolve. Slamming the phone down in frustration, Axel cursed under his breath. Was this just a coincidence, or did Samuel have something to do with it? As Axel stewed in his frustration, he wasn't alone. His gang members began receiving similar notifications. Bank accounts frozen, credit cards declined, and odd charges showing up on their statements. It felt like their lives were being dismantled bit by bit. Meanwhile, Samuel sat comfortably in his living room, watching everything unfold in real time on his computer. Ryan had set up a secure line, sending him live updates on the operation. The bikers had no idea that the person behind their downfall was a 93-year-old man and his tech-savvy grandson. They're starting to feel the heat. Ryan's voice buzzed through the speakerphone. Their accounts are frozen, and we've flagged their names with every bank we could access. By tomorrow, they won't be able to buy a cup of coffee without triggering an alert. Samuel nodded, his expression calm but satisfied. Good work, Ryan, but we're far from finished. There's more? Ryan asked, curious about what his grandfather had in mind. Samuel leaned back, his eyes focused with determination. I made a promise, and I plan on keeping it. We're going to take them down completely, financially, legally, and physically. Their plan was already moving into the next phase. Samuel had called in some old favors from his military days to dig deeper into Axel's crew. What Ryan had uncovered so far was just the surface. The bikers weren't just small-time troublemakers. They were tied to larger, more dangerous criminal networks, and Samuel was determined to bring it all crashing down. The following morning, Axel woke up to complete chaos. Half his gang was in shambles. Some had been arrested overnight on old warrants, while others were scrambling to figure out how their lives had been turned upside down. Axel's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Frantic messages flooded in from his crew. None of this makes sense. Pete, one of his most loyal guys, said, It's like someone's tracking everything we do. Axel slammed his fist on the table. It's gotta be that old man. He's behind this somehow. But how? Pete asked, a nervous glance around the room. He's just one guy. Axel didn't have an answer, but he knew one thing. He wasn't about to let an old man destroy everything he'd worked for. Get the bikes ready, Axel barked. We're going to pay him another visit. Just as they were preparing to leave, a convoy of unmarked vehicles rolled up outside the clubhouse. Men in suits stepped out, flashing badges. FBI, stay where you are. Axel's. He knew his gang was knee-deep in illegal activities, but he hadn't expected things to blow up like this. As the agents cuffed him and led him away, Samuel's words echoed in his mind. You're all going to wish you'd never set foot on this lawn. As Axel was hauled off in handcuffs, disbelief clouded his thoughts. Just hours earlier, he had been in control, terrorizing the town with no fear of the locals or law enforcement. Now, everything was falling apart, and he was powerless to stop it. One name dominated his thoughts, Samuel Turner. How had that old man managed to pull all of this off? Back at Samuel's house, the elderly veteran sat on his porch, watching the unmarked cars drive by. He knew this was just the beginning. The plan was working, but there was more to be done. Axel was only a piece of the puzzle, and Samuel's years of experience told him the real threat still loomed. His phone rang. It was Ryan. Grandpa, they got Axel. He's being taken in for questioning. The feds are all over it, just like you said. Samuel nodded, his voice steady. Good, but this isn't over yet, Ryan. We need to dig deeper. Axel may be out of the picture for now, but others are still out there. We need to make sure they all go down. Ryan's fingers flew across his keyboard. I'm on it. I'm already tracking a few more accounts tied to the bigger syndicate. Samuel's gaze hardened. Don't stop until we have everything. I want every last one of them brought down. Later that evening, Samuel sat in his study, staring at an old, worn photograph of himself and his military unit. The picture may have faded, but the memories remained vivid. These were the men he had fought beside, the ones who had trusted him with their lives. And now, decades later, some of those same men were still helping him, even if it was in a different way. He picked up the phone again, dialing a number he hadn't used in years. After a few rings, a familiar voice answered. Samuel Turner? It's been a long time. Too long, Colonel Donovan, Samuel replied, recognizing the voice of his former commanding officer. I need a favor. There was a pause on the other end. What kind of favor are we talking about? The kind that involves taking down a criminal syndicate, Samuel said bluntly. I've got the intel, but I need the manpower, Colonel Donovan chuckled. You always did like jumping headfirst into things, didn't you? Send me what you've got. I'll activate my contacts. We'll make sure this thing gets shut down for good. Samuel exhaled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. Colonel Donovan was one of the few people he trusted with something of this magnitude. And with his reach in government and military circles, Samuel knew they stood a chance, not only to stop the bikers, but to dismantle the larger criminal network pulling the string. Meanwhile, in a sleek, unmarked office miles away, a man sat behind a large desk reviewing a file. His name was Damian Blackwell, one of the most powerful figures in the criminal underworld. His connections ran deep through nearly every major illegal enterprise, and his influence stretched far beyond local gangs like Axel's. But now, something troubling had come to his attention. The file in front of him detailed arrests, frozen assets, and FBI involvement, all tied directly to Axel's crew. This level of scrutiny was bad for business. It was clear someone was interfering, someone with resources and the capability to bring down an entire operation in a matter of days. Damien dialed a number and spoke sharply into the phone. We have a situation. Find out who's responsible for this mess and take care of it quietly. The voice on the other end responded with a calm, consider it done. Hanging up, Damien leaned back, already calculating his next steps. He knew in this line of work, staying ahead was everything, and whoever had dared to interfere with his operations was about to realize just how lethal it was to cross Damian Blackwell. Back in Stewartville, with Axel and much of his gang behind bars, the town breathed a sigh of relief. But Samuel knew better. This quiet wouldn't last long. The true fight was just getting started, and he wasn't about to drop his guard. One afternoon, Ryan arrived at Samuel's house, laptop in hand, a look of urgency on his face. Grandpa, you need to see this, Ryan said, setting the computer on the table. Samuel leaned in as his grandson pulled up an array of files, bank transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts, all forming a vast web of illicit activity. It was far more complex than they'd initially thought. This goes beyond Axel, Ryan explained. I traced the money trail back to a guy named Damian Blackwell. He's into everything, drug trafficking, weapons deals, you name it. Axel was just a small part of his operation. Samuel's face hardened at the mention of Blackwell's name. Damian Blackwell, I've heard of him. He's dangerous. Ryan nodded. I've already started flagging his accounts, but he's got layers of protection. We're going to need more than hacking to bring him down. Samuel's mind raced. Taking down someone as powerful as Blackwell wasn't going to be easy. This wasn't just a gang leader. This was a man who had built an empire on crime. We're going to need Colonel Donovan, Samuel said, his tone firm, and we're going to need to tread carefully. Blackwell won't go down without a fight. Samuel made a call to Colonel Donovan, explaining what they'd uncovered. True to his word, Colonel Donovan had already mobilized his contacts, and within hours, a task force was being assembled. But Colonel Donovan had a warning. Blackwell is a different kind of threat, he said. He's not just smart, he's ruthless. If we go after him, we need to be ready for the backlash. I understand the risks, Samuel replied, but we've come too far to back down now. Colonel Donovan agreed. All right, we're in. I'll coordinate with the feds, and we'll take Lang out of the game. But you need to stay out of sight. If Blackwell finds out you're involved, he'll come after you, and he won't hesitate. Samuel nodded, fully aware of the stakes. Damian Blackwell wasn't some small-time thug. He had the power and the reach to strike at anyone, anywhere. But Samuel wasn't afraid. He'd faced worse, and he wasn't about to let fear dictate his choices now. As Samuel hung up, he gazed toward the horizon, the weight of the looming conflict pressing down on him. But one thing was clear. He had spent his life fighting to protect the innocent, and that wasn't going to change now. In the following weeks, Samuel, Ryan, and Colonel Donovan worked around the clock. The FBI was building a case, piecing together the full extent of Damian Blackwell's criminal empire. But the deeper they dug, the more volatile the situation became. Blackwell wasn't the kind of man to sit idly by, and Samuel knew it was only a matter of time before he retaliated. Late one evening, as Ryan monitored digital communications, he stumbled upon something disturbing, an encrypted message sent to one of Blackwell's top men. It mentioned Samuel by name, along with a grim directive. "Grandpa," Ryan said, his voice tight with concern. "They know. Blackwell's ordered a hit. They're coming for you." Samuel's expression remained steady, though the gravity of Ryan's words was clear. This wasn't just a strategic battle anymore. It had turned personal. Blackwell's men wouldn't stop until the job was done, and they wouldn't care who got caught in the crossfire. "Then we'll be ready," Samuel said, his voice unwavering. "It's time to take the fight to them." As night fell, Samuel began preparing his home for the confrontation he knew was coming. His military instincts took over. He fortified the house with hidden cameras, alarms, and improvised defenses designed to slow down any attackers. Despite his age, Samuel moved with precision and purpose, his years of experience guiding each step. Ryan watched in awe and concern. "Are you sure we're ready for this?" "We don't have a choice," Samuel replied calmly. "They won't stop until we're dead. But they've made a mistake. They've underestimated us." Ryan nodded, trusting his grandfather's judgment, though the tension was palpable. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside seemed like a harbinger of the violence to come. They both knew the clock was ticking down, and when the moment came, they'd be ready. Samuel's phone rang, and Colonel Donovan was on the other end. The task force was in motion, hitting Lang's operations across the nation, with several key figures already apprehended. But Lang himself remained at large, his whereabouts unknown. "We're closing in," Colonel Donovan said. "But hold your position. Don't engage unless it's absolutely necessary. We'll handle Lang." "I'm not one to sit on the sidelines," Samuel replied, his voice firm. "But I'll do what's needed." Colonel Donovan understood Samuel's nature. He'd always been a man of action. But this mission required patience. The last thing anyone wanted was for Samuel to get caught in the crossfire. As the call ended, Samuel and Ryan heard the distant rumble of motorcycles. Lang's men were coming, just as ordered. The engines roared louder, and soon the headlights from the motorcycles pierced the darkness at the edge of Samuel's property. It was clear that Lang had dispatched some of his most dangerous men, seasoned criminals with no qualms about doing whatever was necessary to complete their mission. From inside the house, Samuel and Ryan watched as the bikers rolled in, dismounting their rides with an air of confidence. They moved with swagger, expecting an easy job. After all, they were dealing with an elderly man and his young grandson. How difficult could it be? But Samuel had other ideas. As the first biker stepped onto the porch, an alarm triggered, alerting Samuel to their exact location. Without hesitation, Samuel set off a series of security measures. Floodlights lit up the yard, alarms blared through the air, and a high-pitched sound rang out, disorienting the attackers. "Stay low," Samuel whispered to Ryan as they moved to a safer area in the house. The bikers, momentarily thrown off, tried to regain their bearings, but Samuel's traps had been meticulously set. Within seconds, two of them were ensnared by hidden devices that immobilized them. The leader of the group, a towering man known as Viper, wasn't as easily rattled. Barking orders to his men, Viper smashed through the door with a crowbar. But the moment he stepped inside, he was met with unexpected resistance. Samuel stood ready, an old military-issue shotgun aimed squarely at Viper. This is your last chance to walk away, Samuel warned, his tone calm yet commanding. Viper sneered, unfazed by the sight of an elderly man armed with a shotgun. You think you can take me down, old man? Samuel's eyes didn't waver. I've handled worse than you. In one swift motion, Viper lunged forward. But Samuel, with military precision, fired a warning shot, grazing Viper's shoulder and sending him stumbling back, startled. Viper cursed, clutching his bleeding shoulder. But before he could retaliate, flashing lights filled the yard. Unmarked cars sped onto the property, and federal agents stormed the scene, weapons drawn, ready to neutralize Lang's men. Colonel Donovan had sent reinforcements just in time. The raid was swift and efficient. Lang's bikers were no match for the well-coordinated task force. One by one, the criminals were subdued, handcuffed, and escorted to waiting vehicles. Viper, still gripping his wounded shoulder, glared at Samuel as he was led away. You'll regret this, Viper growled, his eyes full of malice. Samuel remained silent, watching as the last of Lang's men were taken into custody. He knew this was only the beginning. Viper was just a piece in Lang's larger scheme, and the true threat was still looming. As the dust settled, Colonel Donovan approached Samuel, a look of respect on his face. Still got it, I see, Colonel Donovan said with a grin, clapping Samuel on the back. Samuel gave a small smile. Old habits die hard, but this isn't over yet. Colonel Donovan nodded gravely. We're closing in on Lang. We've already seized millions of dollars in assets and dismantled several of his operations, but we haven't pinned down his location yet. Samuel's expression turned serious. He'll come for me, and when he does, I'll be ready. As Samuel and Ryan sat in the quiet aftermath of the raid, there was a moment of brief relief. The immediate danger had passed, but the shadow of Damian Lang still loomed large over them. Ryan looked at his grandfather, admiration shining in his eyes. How do you always know exactly what to do? Ryan asked. Samuel chuckled softly. Years of experience, kid. You learn to be ready for anything. But their moment of calm was interrupted when Ryan's phone buzzed with a new message. As he read it, his face went pale. What is it? Samuel asked, sensing the shift in the air. Ryan turned the phone toward Samuel. The message was from an unknown number and contained just 3 words. I'm coming, Samuel. It was a clear message. Damian Lang had made his move. Samuel stared at the screen. He had expected this moment, but it didn't lessen the weight of the threat. Lang was not someone to underestimate, and now Samuel knew that Lang would stop at nothing to finish the job. But Samuel wasn't one to cower. He had faced formidable enemies before. If Lang wanted a fight, he'd get one. We need to prepare, Samuel said quietly, already planning their next steps. Ryan's fingers moved quickly over his laptop. I'm tracing the message. If I can pinpoint Lang's location, we might have a chance to stop him before he reaches us. Samuel nodded, appreciating Ryan's quick thinking. Good, but stay focused. Lang's more dangerous now than ever. As Ryan worked, Samuel made another call to Colonel Donovan. They needed to move quickly and launch a final strike against Lang before he could retaliate. The clock was ticking, and Samuel knew their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. Hours passed, the tension in the air growing thicker with every moment as they braced for the final showdown. Ryan's screen flickered as the trace locked onto Lang's position. Got him, he said, voice tense with anticipation. He's hiding out in an old warehouse on the outskirts of town. It's well guarded, but we've got a shot if we act quickly. Samuel grabbed his shotgun, determination written all over his face. Then let's finish this. Colonel Donovan's team was prepped and ready. Agents had been mobilized for a coordinated assault on Lang's stronghold. But Samuel wasn't about to sit this one out. Even at his age, he knew his instincts and experience would be critical in the field. As the convoy neared the warehouse, Samuel and Colonel Donovan rode up front. This was the final confrontation. Either Lang would be taken down, or everything they'd worked for would be obliterated. The strike team moved in silently, encircling the warehouse. Tension hung in the air, each creak from the old building amplifying the sense of urgency. Inside, Lang's men patrolled, oblivious to the storm about to hit them. Samuel exchanged a look with Colonel Donovan. Their years of partnership had built an unspoken trust, but this mission felt different. This time it was personal. The team breached the warehouse and chaos exploded. Lang's men opened fire, but the agents were prepared. The firefight was intense, bullets ripping through the air, shouts bouncing off the walls. Samuel moved through the fray with surprising agility, his military instincts kicking in. He advanced toward the core of the building, knowing that Lang would be waiting there. Samuel found him in a dimly lit office, surrounded by monitors and scattered papers. Lang was eerily calm, as if he'd been expecting this confrontation. "So we finally meet," Lang said, his voice ice cold. "I've heard a lot about you, Samuel Turner. You've been quite the problem." Samuel leveled his shotgun, finger steady on the trigger. "It's over, Lang. You've lost." Lang chuckled, eyes narrowing. "You really think this ends with me? There will always be another to take my place. You've wasted your time." Samuel didn't flinch. "Maybe, but you won't be around to see it." Lang's hand twitched toward a gun on his desk, but Samuel didn't give him a chance. A single blast echoed through the room as Lang collapsed to the floor. Defeated, Samuel stood there for a moment, heart pounding, the weight of it all sinking in. The battle was over, but the aftermath still clung in the air. Damian Lang was dead, his empire dismantled, but the scars of the fight would linger. As Colonel Donovan's team cleared the warehouse, rounding up the last of Lang's crew, Samuel and Ryan finally allowed themselves a moment to breathe as they walked out of the building together. Ryan looked at his grandfather with renewed admiration. "You did it, Grandpa. It's finally over." Samuel nodded, but his expression remained serious. "It's never truly over, Ryan. There will always be someone like Lang. But we did what needed to be done." Colonel Donovan approached, giving Samuel a firm pat on the back. "You saved a lot of lives today, Samuel. Couldn't have done it without you." Samuel offered a small smile. "It was a team effort. I'm just glad we stopped him before things got worse." As the sun began to rise, casting a golden glow over the scene, a sense of calm washed over Samuel. The fight had been long, grueling, but in the end they had won. And for now, that was enough. With Damian Lang's criminal empire reduced to rubble, the quiet town of Stewartville began to reclaim its peace. The people, once living in fear of Lang's gang, could now walk the streets freely, without looking over their shoulders. Samuel, a man many had underestimated, had proven that age was no match for courage, strength, and justice. Sitting back on the porch, Samuel settled into his favorite chair, the very place where the whole ordeal had started. Ryan was next to him, their bond now stronger than ever after all they had endured. Together, they had faced danger head-on and come out Damianius. But as Samuel looked out toward the horizon, he understood this wouldn't be the final test. New challenges would arise, and when they did, he would be ready. This tale reminds us that true bravery and wisdom don't diminish with time. Samuel Turner, at 93 years old, proved that the most surprising heroes are often those who step forward when it counts the most. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. For more thrilling and uplifting stories, share this video with your friends and family, and leave a comment with your thoughts below.